Hello guys, welcome to this video. This is BJ Min from HowExpert.com, where we publish short how-to guides on unique topics by everyday experts. And today's expert author is Shane Reinhard. He's the author of a book about coaching high school girls basketball. And before we get started with the interview, I want to read a quick bio about him, about something interesting about him before we get started, okay? So Shane Reinhard, or is it Reinhard? Sorry about that.
It's Reinhard.
Reinhard, exactly. Some of his passions include coaching, faith, and being left-handed. Shane has been in high school coach for the last 7 years as I'm doing this video, involving tennis and basketball. Faith is very important to him because he grew up as a pastor's kid and currently leads worship at a church in Utah. Lastly, one interesting thing is also him, his brother, his father, his grandfather, and himself included are all left-handed. So that's something very interesting about Shane. So welcome to this interview, Shane. Thanks for coming to this interview.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. By the way, guys, if you guys are curious about his book, ebook, paperback book, and audiobook coming out, make sure to check out the video description and check out the resources below the video. Now, Shane, let's talk about for those people who are searching on YouTube, Google about, someone like yourself, basically. They will probably watch this video because they're searching for how to become a high school basketball coach for girls. What was your journey? How did you become a high school basketball coach?
Yeah, I grew up having the opportunity to play sports all my life growing up, and as I got into high school, I did play basketball my freshman year, but then after that I had experiences where I actually got cut from the high school team, and so it kind of created an early journey in my life where I got to start coaching. My senior year of high school, I actually got to coach a freshman team as an assistant coach, and from there I just loved the experience. It was a boys freshman team. Whatever I could get my hands on coaching, if it was a recreation team for 7th and 8th grade boys when I was in college. And then as I was in the university setting, my minor was in coaching. And so I had to have an experience where I coached at the high school level. And so I got an opportunity to do that with the girls basketball high school.
So now are you a teacher? You're a teacher in high school, right?
Yeah. Teacher and coach at a local high school here in Utah.
So the first, for people who are teachers interested in becoming a coach, a basketball coach, did you do it the first year? What would be your advice for them, basic advice for them getting started?
Well, for me, it was actually just getting into coaching first. They needed an assistant girls coach. I was actually the second assistant on the team, and they needed someone extra. I coached 1 year. The next year I graduated from college, and it just kind of dropped on a plate for me to teach as well. And so it was just a great foot in the door so I could teach after I started coaching.
You've been coaching for 7 years basketball?
Yeah, at the high school level, it's been for 7 years, over a decade in terms of recreation and other things as well.
Cool.
And it just starts from a legacy of my own family. I talked about, you talked about my left-handed kind of background, but I've just had family growing up that were teachers and coaches all the way back to my great-grandparents. And so that's kind of just created a legacy within my family.
Did they teach coach basketball as well?
Yeah, I had a grandfather that coached basketball, baseball, and football, and then my great grandfather was baseball. So yeah, basketball was a part of my history.
So I'm sure, did they teach you while you were growing up how to coach, or did you pick up some stuff from them? What did you learn from them?
Yeah, I think you pick up the things. It's funny in coaching, you pick up the things that you really enjoy and you really like. Also, when you're an athlete and you're being coached, you notice the things that you hated, right? That you didn't like about your coach, and you're like, I'm never going to be that as a coach. It's both ways. You learn on both sides of the spectrum.
What are some lessons that after all these years of coaching yourself that you would tell the other coaches, what to do and what not to do as a coach that works?
Sure. I think a lot of times as a coach, we think a lot about the strategy, right? We can't sleep at night thinking about, how the last play went, or, how this could have gone differently. But I think in my journey, it's been more about what are the relationships that I'm creating with
Mhm.
my athletes. It's much more than just, X's and O's and what drills am I going to use today. It's more about like, how am I teaching this person for a lifetime after they leave this high school? How are the lessons that they learn on the basketball court, off the basketball court, with relationship with other players, coaches? How do we create that? How do we instill that? And I think that's definitely the journey that I don't always think about, but it's what I always want to each and every day. How are we getting better as people, not just basketball players?
Interesting. Okay. So what are the most common challenges for the first time coach in general?
Sure. I think the challenge is, especially, I mean, in my case, I was able to inherit a program that was really successful. As I was an assistant coach, we won back-to-back state championships,
Wow.
and as I came into the process, I inherited a really good team. I think a lot of coaches don't get that opportunity. If they're trying to get hired, a lot of times the program is in disarray, and you're dealing with situations where you've had maybe negative issues within the program with the athletes. Maybe it's been an issue with how the coach was interacting with the parents or the administration. So, knowing the history as you get into a program is a very important question to ask when you're being interviewed. What are you walking into, essentially?
Right. And maybe there might be people out there who want to do coaching, but they're kind of maybe fearful of stepping out and doing it. What are the joys of coaching, the benefits that you would tell the beginning coach, hey, you should do it because of these reasons? What are the
Right.
joys?
Sure. I think it's easy for us as coaches to set a standard on, how success is built on wins. That's just a natural thing in competition. But the thing that I've had to learn as a head coach is, like I talked about earlier, the life lessons. What kind of things am I seeing within my program that are positive for the future? Sending a girl to college on an athletic scholarship for girls basketball, a big deal, right? For them to be paying for their education, or for just the opportunity that they use basketball in recreation as they're in college, or, do they come back to the program? Do they come back and visit the program? One of the best things I love when I've got old players that come back, for a practice or for a game. If I can, I grab them as soon as they walk in and say, hey, like, what do you miss about basketball here at this high school? What lessons have you learned? And it gives these like young freshmen and our varsity players the opportunity to be like, wow, like, there's life after this sport, right? And not all of us are going to play at the collegiate level or beyond that. This might be as far as we go, but you get to teach them about things about how you connect with each other as a community, how you support each other in wins and losses. I think about the joys and the negatives that come with it. We get to create empathy on the team. We get to create conversation. I mean, it's one of the best ways to teach communication. How do you communicate not only off the court but on the court? So there's just, I mean, I could go on for days about the life lessons that you can teach.
How do you deal with? I'm just curious. How do you deal with sometimes students, maybe the players, they don't want to listen to you, but how to make sure they listen to you? Because there's going to be all kinds of students, players. Some will
Right.
follow you, some won't.
Right. I mean, I'm going to be coaching players that are going to connect with my style, right? And there's going to be some players that are not. I think it's a big deal to have a coaching staff that, in some ways has connections with what you're doing as a program. You want to be like-minded, but at the same time, I mean, I have coaches on my staff that have, different experiences. For example, I have a female coach um, for our girls basketball team who really doesn't have a big background in coaching basketball. She actually background in tennis is really her stick, but she is great at connecting with our girls. I
Wow.
mean, it's not a, I mean, a guy connecting with a girl is much different than a female coach connecting with a female athlete. We
Right.
all bring something to the table, so I feel like having a coaching staff that is well rounded. I have coaches that are better basketball players than me, but I have maybe more experience. So we just have all of this that kind of brings to the table, and I think it makes us better. And then our girls connect with, some girls are going to connect different with me than they're going to connect with others. I definitely have seen that in a process as an assistant coach. I think girls really were able to they're not scared of me, right? I'm like the closest person to them in age and connecting that way. I become the head coach, and it's like, oh man, like, it's a little scary now, right? I can't just talk to you. So I got other coaches that they can talk to, not just about basketball, but like what's going on in their lives, right? I mean, these teenagers are dealing with so much these days, with social media and with, their friends and situations that, you or I are just, it's so different. So that way they can connect in that way.
Cool. So that's pretty cool to hear, because maybe there's somebody out there who wants to be a coach, but they may not be good at basketball per se, but they can still go into the coaching, either as an assistant starting out. That's awesome.
Definitely.
Practically speaking, maybe there's a teacher out there who wants to get their foot in the door in coaching. What do they need to do to become a coach? Like, who do they need to speak? What do they need to do? Yeah.
Yeah. I think with my experience, I ended up getting connected with a former college coach at the D1 level who had kind of run his course as a college coach, and he got the opportunity to coach high school, and he was just, gnawing at the bit to get back in. And because I knew him, it was just an easy connection. I don't think a lot of people have those connections. So I think, finding those connections are a big deal. I think it would be definitely worth maybe a young coach's while to go to a local high school, maybe one that you attended or one around you, where you can just be like, hey, can I observe what you're doing as a coach? I'm interested in getting into coaching. Create a connection that way. A lot of times coaches are very interested in having people come check out, their program, come out to a game, pick their brain with questions. I mean, networking is the greatest thing you can do. If you're already into coaching, it's easy to go to clinics and go, to local, professional team venues or collegiate levels. I mean, we have the opportunity all the time to go to our local universities in the state of Utah and just watch their practices for the girls, for the boys. We just have to connect that way. So, I mean, for some, you might have to go out on a limb a little bit more and try to make those connections. But experience is big too. Like, I mean, I started at the recreational level, right? It wasn't just I hopped right into the high school level or I was right into collegiate coaching or anything like that. I started, at a small point and worked my way up. So I think there's a lot of different ways, but using experience, using connections that you have, networking are big deals.
Okay. So explain how a coaching staff can complete their experience for players.
Sure. I think with our coaching staff, we talk a lot about, we actually have like a covenant in place where we have expectations, and they don't only sign it, but it's more about are you abiding by it? And so we just check in with our players, right? I mean, it's check in with how they're doing in basketball. How are they doing with their skills and what we're teaching? But how are you doing in English class? How are you doing in physics? I mean, some classes that they're dealing with. I mean, they're high school students, so they have a lot more than basketball on their minds a lot of times. So I think completing the experience is knowing that, yeah, we want to make them the best basketball players around, right? We want to compete and win, division titles and win state titles. But at the end of the day, are we helping them in life? What can we do to make them successful academically? What's going on in their lives that we can help out with their friends or their family? I mean, we're a community. And so I think the biggest thing I would say is the coaching staff, we meet every year before the team gets together, and we start that community together as a coaching staff. And then we need to bring that into our players. And so I think if you could instill anything as a coaching staff, it would be, showing that there's people that actually care about you here, and you're not alone in this journey called life.
You know what? I found one thing that interesting you were mentioning was that when you first got started, you were part of a championship team,
right,
that won. Mm-hmm. And there's probably some coaches out there, they're struggling, they're losing and whatnot, but you've been part of the winning culture, the winning program. So if you could look at what made your program, the coaches in your school, different than others that made you guys so successful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we won back-to-back state championships, one of those years we went undefeated, 22-0. I mean, we had I mean, our coach with the Division I experience that he had, I mean, he just had 30 years where he had gone through the highs and lows of it, right? And so, I mean, for him as a coach, he did not give up, right, when it was really low. I mean, of course, at the college level, you can get fired. I mean, in high school level, you can do that as well. But he could have just said, well, maybe that profession's not for me. But he kept, applying for jobs and kept trying to be in that environment. And so, you got to dig deep in those times, I guess would be the cliche phrase. Like you've got to keep investing in your program and know that it's not going to change automatically, right? Even though I inherited a good program and there's a lot of things that I want to keep the same, this is my third year coming up as the head coach. Like there's still things that we're trying to get towards that we've been working on since the first year. And it's things that, like I said, we've used from the past. It's things we're using now. But yeah, I mean, you got to stick through it. I think also the assistant, me having the opportunity to assistant coach and the other assistant coaches that we had, we were fully bought in. A lot of the assistant coaches at the high school level aren't making a lot of money, right? Just to be frank. And even in some high school head coach positions, you're not making a ton of money. But, how much do you commit to? If you're not making a lot of money, a lot of times people aren't going to commit the same way, right? But I think we had people that were like, we're not going to miss a practice. We're going to be early to games. We're going to help after practice and get their jump shot going, a few more jumpers before they go. I mean, that's the kind of legacy and environment we want to create in our program. And I think we've seen success at that because we all care. It doesn't matter the money, doesn't matter the success. It matters about what's the ultimate goal.
Right. Final questions. If you were to tell your younger self getting into the coaching basketball, what advice would you give your younger self to accelerate the success even more?
Sure. I would say don't take it so seriously. I think we garnered so much success early that there was maybe pressure to succeed, but I think I put most of that pressure on myself, right? That I needed to have these lofty goals and still be the same way. But you're going to have different players. You might be doing the same stuff and it might not work for that team. It's a puzzle you have to put together. And so I think I'd get a lot more sleep and a lot more be a lot less stressed, right? If I thought that way. And coaching is stressful, right? And you have to find ways as a young coach to counteract that stress. What are things outside of basketball, your family, hobbies, your maybe a job, whatever it is that you can still put into that you'll still come back to basketball motivated, rejuvenated to coach.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the interview, Shane. If you are interested in getting Shane's book about how to coach high school girls basketball, click on the link below the video and check out the ebook, paperback, and audiobook coming soon in the future. Thank you, Shane, for coming to the interview. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
All right, take care.